Under the dim glow of Jerusalem's government complex, the air feels dense with anticipation. Dozens of journalists gather in the press hall as screens flicker with the words, "The government of Israel has approved the Gaza agreement." The message, brief yet monumental, signals a turning point in a conflict that has long defined the region's political and emotional landscape. The Israeli government, after weeks of tense deliberations and midnight sessions, has given its final nod to the hostages' release deal, a breakthrough shaped by indirect negotiations in Egypt and framed within the broader US-brokered Gaza peace roadmap. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office confirmed the decision late in the evening, calling it a vital step toward ending this painful chapter and bringing our people home. The announcement comes after days of diplomatic choreography in Sharm el-Sheikh, where delegations from Israel, Hamas, Qatar, Egypt and US mediators huddled in separate rooms, trading proposals and conditions through intermediaries. It was a process marked by mistrust and political calculation, yet it produced what many diplomats describe as the most significant ceasefire framework since 2023. Inside the Egyptian resort's marble hall, cameras captured the unmistakable tension of the talks. The Israeli delegation, led by Mossad Chief David Barnea and National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi, sat in silence as Qatari and Egyptian mediators walked in and out, relaying messages to the Hamas team stationed in an adjacent wing. For nearly a week, progress came in whispers, a draft here, a counteroffer there. But when word arrived that Washington had greenlit the first phase of Trump's peace plan, the atmosphere shifted. The core of the deal is both simple and staggering. It sets out a sequence that, if respected, could end one of the bloodiest conflicts in decades. First, the release of all remaining Israeli hostages held in Gaza. In return, the phased release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails, many of them women and minors detained since the October 2023 clashes. The second clause outlines a gradual Israeli military withdrawal from major population centres, including Gaza City, Khan Yunis, Rafah and the Northern Strip, while international forces, primarily US observers, monitor compliance. According to the White House, about 200 US soldiers will be deployed across regional command posts, not as combatants, but as peace overseers under what's being described as the Middle East Stability Task Force. Their presence, US officials say, is symbolic and strategic, a visible guarantee that both sides adhere to the ceasefire and reconstruction commitments. President Donald Trump, speaking from the Oval Office, called the agreement a total end to the war in Gaza. His tone was triumphant but deliberate, echoing a sense of personal achievement. "This is peace through strength," he said, "and we've shown that leadership, not lectures, can bring real results." For Israel, the move comes amid deep internal debate. Netanyahu, facing mounting pressure from hostage families and hardline coalition partners, walked a tightrope between political survival and moral responsibility. Thousands of Israelis have camped outside his residence for months, demanding that the government prioritize the hostages' safe return over military objectives. In Gaza, the reaction was mixed, part relief, part skepticism. Hamas spokesperson Hazem Qassem told Al Qahira News that the agreement marks the official end of aggression against our people and the start of rebuilding Gaza. Yet in the same breath, he warned that Israel must abide by every term or the resistance will respond. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, speaking from Ramallah, welcomed the deal cautiously. "We hope this is the beginning of a genuine peace, not a pause before another tragedy," he said, adding that Palestinian unity and reconstruction must follow swiftly. On the streets of Gaza City, people emerged from the ruins to listen to the news broadcast from small battery radios and car speakers. The sight of smoke still rising from bombed-out neighbourhoods contrasted sharply with the message of peace. Ambulances moved slowly past crowds, waving makeshift flags as children played near piles of rubble, fragments of a city waiting to breathe again. In one particularly symbolic moment, a group of mothers whose children were held in Israeli prisons held up signs reading, "Our sons for their sons, let them all return." Their voices echoed the painful symmetry of the conflict. One side's captives are the other's prisoners, and both count the cost in human grief. Across the border, Israeli families of hostages watched the press conference live from Tel Aviv's Hostage Square. When Netanyahu appeared on screen, some cried, others shouted. "Bring them home now," a woman yelled, clutching a picture of her son. Her voice carried the exhaustion of a nation torn between vengeance and closure. Diplomatically, this accord bears the fingerprints of multiple capitals. Egypt's intelligence services coordinated the logistics. Qatar provided the financial guarantees for Gaza's early reconstruction phase. The US oversaw the legal framework and pledged a $10 billion stabilization fund for the region. But beyond politics, the mood across the Middle East is cautiously hopeful. After 2 years of relentless war, with over 67,000 Palestinians and 1,900 Israelis killed, the guns have finally fallen silent, at least for now. At the Rafah crossing, aid convoys lined up in rows, stretching for kilometers. Trucks bearing the insignia of the Red Crescent and World Food Programme waited for final clearance to enter. For Gaza's 2 million residents, many of whom have been displaced multiple times, these convoys represent not just aid, but the first tangible sign of normalcy. US officials have emphasized that the implementation phase will be critical. The agreement, they warn, is not a peace treaty, but a roadmap, one dependent on continuous coordination, trust building, and verification. That's why the Pentagon's Regional Command has established a 24-hour monitoring hub in Jordan, tasked with relaying satellite and ground surveillance data to both sides. In Israel, reactions within the Knesset were split. Some members hailed it as a historic necessity, while others denounced it as a capitulation to terror. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, however, defended the decision, saying, "Every soldier who fought in Gaza deserves to know that it was not for nothing. Peace is the victory." At the same time, political analysts in Tel Aviv point out that Netanyahu's approval may signal a pivot from war leadership to legacy management. With the economy strained, international isolation deepening, and his domestic support waning, Netanyahu's gamble is as personal as it is political. In Washington, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, described the agreement as the first genuine alignment between Israel's security and Palestinian sovereignty since Camp David. He emphasized that regional partners like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE would be brought into the second phase, which includes demilitarization and reconstruction guarantees. Meanwhile, on the ground in Gaza, the challenges remain immense. Hospitals run on diesel generators, schools lie in ruins, and vast swaths of the population remain without clean water. Yet amid these ruins, hope flickers. In Khan Yunis, a young man is seen repainting the shattered walls of his home with a simple message in Arabic, "We will live." For many, this agreement is not just about politics, it's about survival. It's about reclaiming the right to exist without fear of drones overhead or bombs in the night. And as one aid worker put it, every truce begins with a whisper. Let's hope this one becomes a song. Over the following days, international observers are expected to begin verifying the first withdrawals. Israeli military convoys have already started pulling out from northern Gaza, while engineering units dismantle checkpoints and forward bases. Satellite images show bulldozers clearing roadblocks, the slow, bureaucratic choreography of ending a war. In Europe, leaders from Paris, Berlin, and London have all welcomed the development. French President Emmanuel Macron stated, "Europe will fully support the peace and reconstruction of Gaza, politically and financially." British Foreign Secretary Kemi Badenoch echoed the sentiment, calling the moment a rare chance to redefine the moral compass of diplomacy in the Middle East. Yet, as optimism spreads, so too does apprehension. Analysts warn that fringe groups on both sides could attempt to derail the process. Israeli settlers have already staged protests outside the Knesset, denouncing the deal as a surrender. Hamas's military wing, the Qassam Brigades, has made no secret of its skepticism, releasing a statement that read, "We are not disarming until the occupation ends completely." Still, for ordinary people, mothers, shopkeepers, children, the mood is unmistakably different. Streets once empty now pulse with small signs of revival, reopened bakeries, children returning to half-standing schools, calls to prayer echoing once again without the sound of sirens. Back in Jerusalem, Netanyahu addressed the nation in a televised speech. "We have chosen life," he said. "This agreement does not erase the pain, but it honors the lives we lost by building something new." As his speech ended, Images flashed across global networks, Israeli hostages crossing into Israel, embraced by weeping families. In Gaza, Palestinian prisoners stepping off buses into the arms of relatives who thought they'd never return. Two parallel scenes, one story, humanity rediscovering itself after years of hate. The ceasefire, fragile as glass, will be tested in the days ahead. Implementation, accountability, and political will remain uncertain, but for the first time in years, the word peace is being spoken not as rhetoric, but as reality. As the night settles over Jerusalem and Gaza alike, a single truth resonates across the Middle East, that even after the longest of wars, there can still be a beginning. And perhaps this time, it's not the silence before another storm, but the first breath of peace after generations of fire.